Unfortunately, the first two films in this series were rubbish, but the third one was so fantastic that it was completely worth persevering for about 4 hours just to get to the final one. So with today's actor hop, we start where we left off, which is Alvin and the Chipmunks meet Dr. Frankenstein, and I decided to hop with Michael Bell, who played Dr. Frankenstein, to Rollercoaster, where he plays a character called Chuck. And Rollercoaster is a 1970s, late 1970s film about this guy who starts blowing up roller coasters and sabotaging fairgrounds because he wants money. And I think the premise sounded interesting, that's what really drew me to it, but I think the execution was just a little bit dire. But I have to remember that it was a late 70s film. If it was made now, there would be so much more CGI going on, it would be so much more action-packed, I think it would be darker, and I don't think we'd know as much about the criminal as we do in this film to begin with. So I think it would be quite a different experience, but just personally watching this film, I was kind of disappointed. However, I kept my hopes held high and I took Timothy Bottoms from this film, who played Young Man, and hopped to Parasomnia, where he played Dr. Emil. Parasomnia is about a girl who spent most of her life asleep, and then she wakes up and suddenly she has to discover this world. But obviously the way she reacts to things is quite differently. There's a point where she thinks she's a dog and she doesn't like being in a car, and then she has all these hallucinations where you have this dark fantastical scenes kind of encroaching on her mind, and visually they're quite nice, you know, it's very, very cleverly done. I think the story is told reasonably well, some interesting characters, but there was just something about it that was lacking. There was certainly nothing bad about it. I'm not saying it's a bad film, I just think for me I wasn't that compelled. You know, I finished watching it and thought, yeah, it wasn't a waste of 2 hours, but I could have chosen a better film. But then we hop to one of the best films I've seen this year. We hop with Madison Davenport, who played young Laura in Parasomnia, and we hop to a film where she plays a character called Haley, and this film is Sisters. This is last year's film. Sisters is a 2015 film starring Amy Poehler and Tina Fey. I love them. I particularly love Amy Poehler. I think she's fantastic. There was a scene in this film where she made a particular facial expression, and I still laugh at this. There will be a picture of that moment on screen because I did screenshot it, and I can't get over it. It's so funny. Sisters is a film about two sisters who find out that their parents are selling their family home, and they go there and try to recapture their youth by having a party, and basically it's all of these almost middle-aged people recapturing their youth in this wild maniacal party, and obviously disaster ensues, and it's very funny. The dialogue is amazing. The acting from Poehler and Fey is some of the best acting I've ever seen. Fey's character's temper tantrums are astounding, and just Amy Poehler in general is just absolutely crazy. She's brilliant, really fantastic film. And normally this is not my kind of film, but if you put the right actresses in it, I'm going to love it, and it was so flawless I cannot recommend it enough. So for my next actor hop, it's very likely, almost guaranteed, that I will choose to hop with Amy Poehler to a film. So if you can recommend any of Amy Poehler's films that I haven't seen yet, please do. In fact, yes, I will. I'll be hopping with Amy Poehler regardless. And I have seen Parks and Rec, by the way, it's very good. Yeah, so two kind of disappointing films that led to something Amy Poehler's face. It's just hilarious in that scene. Love it. Let me know your thoughts on any of these three films where I go and try and stop myself from laughing at Amy Poehler's face. And yeah, of course, if you have any suggestions for where I should hop to for the next three in this series, I'd love to hear them, and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye!